All right, we're back now, and there's some modifications we want to talk about. Our patient's still here. Fortunately, he's going to let us continue on with a few more splints, but we're almost done, folks. We're going to go through a modification called a sugar tong. Sometimes we do the sugar tong on the leg. Sometimes it's also called a stirrup type splint. Sugar tong on the arm, which does basically anterior posterior approach and goes around the elbow. Same thing on the stirrup. It goes from one side to the other. It's a really long splint. Noel's going to go through and show us how to do that. Then we're going to talk a little bit about long arm and long leg splints. A lot of times we do a long leg splint for a little kid that broke his femur, broke his leg, and we'll bring it all the way up into the groin area, and that should be a highlight for us, for Jason. All right. All right, go ahead, Noel.
So we're going to see this splint added usually when you've got multiple fractures and you've got a really unstable ankle. So we're not going to have any rotational movement of the foot. The posterior splint is going to stop this movement, but it doesn't necessarily stop the rotation. So we're going to add what's called a sugar tong. Now you will put all these pieces together as you're doing your splint. You're not going to completely do one splint, but we're going to start at the point where this one's been put on. I recommend that you cut all your pieces first. You measure the sugar tong, which is this part that's going to come around the outside of that splint and come up the side of the legs. At the same time, you measure for this. You only need to make sure you allow for this thickness here. So when I measure, I usually run it all the way up to here on both sides, and then by the time we have accounted for that, it ends up in the right place. If it's too long, you can always cut it, but you can't make it longer. So our first splint's in place. The stocking material hasn't been pulled up yet. You can pull the stocking material down here up because the sugar tong is not going to be affected by it. I usually go, if this is a 4-inch, I usually go a size smaller here and do a 3 inches, which is what we're going to do here. I'm just going to hold this up to it. And I guarantee you, no matter how well you measure, it's going to be usually too long. So don't worry about that, you just cut it. This off. And before you forget, go ahead and just shove that back in there and clamp it. Shove it in. There we go. You want to see foil sticking out on the bottom of that. Okay, so now we got our splinting material. We got our sugar tong material here. This is a 3-inch, it's a little bit smaller. And you can see we're long, so we're just going to take this. I'm going to cut it just a little bit shorter than my padding. Okay. First thing I'm going to do is we're going to come back in here. I'm going to bring this padding in, try to get it even. Like this. And again, you can take, there's another time when you can just take this material and this whole thing's in place for you. You don't have to worry about anything out here because you're only going to be splinting back here. Now I'm going to put this on and make sure we're correct. It's about right where we want to be. Same procedure that we did earlier. Straight down. Make this a little bit longer. Roll it up. Get this on. Now, another little trick of the trade. I'm now going to pull this down. And it is going to hold my sugar tong in place.
That is a good trick.
Yep. And don't be afraid right here. If it's feeling kind of loose and it's wanting to come off, and get this padding open.
question I get a lot, Noel, is do you want the posterior splint underneath the sugar tong or stirrup, or the stirrup underneath the other? Which
I
one
always
do you
put
like?
the stirrup on last, because if you don't, there's going to be this bump on the inside of the splint. The posterior is solid all the way up, but if you put the sugar tong under it, there's going to be that thing on their heel. If you imagine this is your posterior splint, so do the posterior splint first, then put your sugar tong
Just
on.
like we did, okay.
Yeah, that wouldn't feel good.
Mm.
Put this back down where it goes.
Again, wrap distally to proximal.
And again, this is going to look really funny because it's thick, but see how I'm shortening this? Because I don't want to have any gaps back here. So you're going to burn A-traps up. We have plenty, so just make sure you are covered, especially on the heel. This is the biggest spot that we end up leaving open. So we didn't get very far with the first A-trap, but that's fine.
Again, as mentioned, take care not to make them too tight. You don't have to use very much muscle to pull these. It's just wrapping them lightly around.
Just enough that you don't have this, where you don't have this hanging loose. You want it just snug enough. We're just there to hold it in place. We're not there to build in compression. There are times we do, but the doctor will tell you when that is going to happen. So,
That would be the norm, though.
No.
so we're a little short on the A-trap. That happens. So you can come back with a 3-inch right here. You can cover this up so it doesn't make your splint look nice still. And you
Don't be
just-
afraid to grab extra material if you need it. Don't try to pull it tighter just because you're afraid you're going to come to the end. Go ahead and just grab another piece.
And that is a huge mistake that we see a lot, is people trying to. Sometimes you don't like Velcro. This one rolls backwards. No, we're good. Okay, so now you've got this stability here. It's sitting inside of that splint right there. And this is as comfortable as it was before. They've got a little bump here. Caution them about putting pressure on it, because what's going to happen, they're going to peel their A-straps off.
They still stay in neutral position, and it just adds that much more protection, especially for a more unstable fracture is why we like to do these. Okay, then